Hey guys, tonight, we're slipping into the shadows of ancient Rome not as emperors or gladiators, but as the people who walked the city's silent corridors while everyone else was fast asleep. Picture marble streets, slick with moonlight lanterns flickering against high walls, and the ever-present scent of oil smoke, and something slightly suspicious. You're not some noble reclining on a couch. You're a Roman night watchman. And trust me, you probably won't survive this job without bruises, bribes, or a few unexpected ghost stories. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it? I love seeing our little global map light up. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge past a row of sleeping tenements, the kind packed tight with snoring laborers, draped laundry, and more rats than you'd care to count. Your sandals scuff against loose gravel. Somewhere to your left, a cat shrieks and disappears into a stack of amphorae. It's the middle of the night in the Eternal City, and you're on the clock, if not exactly the payroll. By day, Rome roars. Markets howl, chariots clatter, and senators yell at one another across mosaicked floors. But by night, the city exudes a strange calm. The streets don't empty so much as settle. Drunks stagger home, lovers sneak out, thieves lie in wait, and that's where you come in. You're part of the Vigiles Urbani Timber, Rome's night watch established by Augustus around 6 BCE, technically to fight fires. But here's the thing. Once someone gives you a torch and the authority to walk around at night, your job evolves pretty quickly. You're not just putting out literal fires. You're stopping fights, breaking up dice games, redirecting lost goats, and sometimes keeping secrets for the right price. The city is divided into 14 regions, and each region has its own little station, almost like a firehouse/gossip hub. Your unit is small, maybe 8 guys if you're lucky, and you rotate patrols. On a good night, you sit near a brazier warming your hands and complaining about your sandals. On a bad night, you're pulling bodies out of a flooded alley. Tonight feels quiet, too quiet, which means either everyone's behaving or someone's just finished misbehaving and fled the scene. You pass a fountain, the water glinting like coins in the moonlight. A couple of citizens wander past their togas, rumpled laughter a little too loud. You nod. They ignore you. Typical. The upper classes tend to pretend you don't exist until they need you. And they do need you. Not just for putting out fires or protecting their shops, but for making sure their secrets stay secret. You've helped senators sneak out of the wrong homes. You've interrupted lovers' quarrels that could have become murder. You've carried drunken poets out of gutters before their verses got soaked. Historians still argue whether the vigils were a true police force or more of a glorified neighborhood watch. Some say you were Rome's answer to law and order. Others, they call you street sweepers with ego problems. The truth? Somewhere in between. Because here's what they forget. Rome didn't sleep. Not really. Bakers started working before midnight. Inns stayed open all night. Rich people threw parties that lasted until dawn, which meant trouble had plenty of time to brew. And someone had to be out here keeping an eye on it. You hear footsteps, fast ones. You duck into a doorway and watch. A figure darts down a side street, cloak flapping. You don't chase. Not yet. You wait, listen. Nothing follows. Probably just a drunk, or a thief, or a lover running late to an affair. All viable options in this town. You keep walking. The lamps hanging from second-story windows cast long shadows. One smells like olive oil. Another, like burning tallow. You prefer the olive oil ones? Less likely to explode. You stop outside a bakery closed now, but still warm from the ovens. You touch the wall. Still radiating heat. Comforting, but dangerous. Fires start fast in Rome and they spread like rumors. That's one of your official tasks, checking for fire hazards, making sure people bank their embers, and praying to Vulcan that nothing flares up before morning. You shift your staff to your left hand. It's not a weapon technically, but it can be. You've used it to break up fights, knock on doors, and occasionally wave at children who insist on reenacting gladiator matches in the street. You remember one night when someone threw a whole amphora at your head, missed, shattered on the cobblestones. You still flinch when you pass that corner. You glance at the sky, still dark. Maybe 2 hours until dawn. The city breathes like something asleep but dreaming. And you keep moving, because even in this moment, quiet calm with only the rustle of fig leaves and the distant trickle of aqueducts, something could go wrong. Someone could slip. Someone could scream. Someone could not scream, and that would be worse. So you walk, not just to patrol, not just to be seen, but because Rome in all her moonlit madness still depends on you, even if she never says thank you, even if she forgets your name, even if she calls you a joke. You keep walking, because this is your beat. And these streets, they're never really empty. You pass under an arch where ivy creeps down like fingers brushing your helmet. Somewhere above, a shutter creaks closed, slowly, deliberately. Someone just watched you walk by. Not unusual. You're used to being observed, ignored, and whispered about sometimes all at once. But tonight, you feel it more keenly. Maybe it's the fog curling along the ground, like lazy smoke. Maybe it's because this neighborhood has a reputation, one that never made it onto any official map, but every watchman knows it by heart. You're in Subura now. By daylight, Subura is chaos in a toga. Market stalls bursting with produce dice players on every corner, poets arguing about meter while stepping over fish guts. But at night, it shifts, like something animal settling into itself. This is where secrets come to breathe, where bribes are slipped under doors, and someone always knows something about someone else's husband. And this is where your job gets complicated, because officially, you're here to watch for fires. Unofficially, you're also expected to act as Rome's least subtle spy. Take that bakery you passed earlier. Technically, just a place to buy flatbread. But you've been sent there before, not for bread but to pass a message, or to listen in on the owner who may or may not be selling more than pastries after dark. Your commander calls these secondary tasks. The term makes them sound clean, neat, but they rarely are. One time you were asked to follow a senator's mistress to see where she spent her nights. Another time you were told to keep a musician away from a dinner party he wasn't invited to, even if it meant misplacing his shoes. Historians still debate how deep the vigils were involved in Roman surveillance. Some argue they were an early form of political intelligence, acting under the orders of powerful patrons. Others insist they were too disorganized to be more than glorified errand boys. The truth depends who's paying you that night. You pause at a doorway. Wooden. Split. Recently kicked in. There's a smear of something mud probably across the stone. You lean in. Nothing inside. But the silence feels staged. You move on. Subura is full of muted emergencies. A broken gate that no one wants fixed. A fire pit burning in a second-story room that no one acknowledges. A scream that nobody heard, even if the whole street tensed when it echoed. You once met a woman who swore her neighbor had returned from the dead. He walks, she told you, just like before, but his eyes don't blink. You chalked it up to grief or wine, but when you knocked on the door in question, no one answered. And later that week, the same woman left town without saying goodbye. You cross into the edge of Argoletum, where the shops press in tighter and the shadows deepen. This is where Rome publishes its opinions. Booksellers and scroll vendors line the street by day. At night, it's a whisper network of informants and rumor traders. You've overheard things here that would make senators weep and gladiators blush. And it's here that your second secret job kicks in. Message courier. You're not supposed to carry scrolls. That's not in the job description. But sometimes, someone passes you one anyway. A sealed wax tablet. A folded piece of parchment with no name, just a symbol. Sometimes it's poetry. Sometimes it's orders. Once you were handed a package filled with dried olives and a single silver coin. No explanation. You deliver it. You don't ask questions. That's rule 1 of night work in Rome. Curiosity is a liability. There are perks, though. One tavern always gives you extra wine. One old man lets you warm your hands over his forge. A few children wave when you pass. These things matter. You remember them when the shifts are long and the shadows bite harder than usual. You reach a crossroad now. A stone marker stands in the center, chipped and mossy. One direction leads back toward the Forum. The other, toward the Hamfield of Mars, where the city's heartbeat quiets completely. You head that way, because rumor says something strange happened there last week. A patrol found a horse with no rider reins trailing in the dust. No blood, no saddle, just hoofprints that ended mid-path. Some say it was a prank. Others say the gods were angry. You suspect the truth is simpler. Someone lost control, or let go, or vanished. The field of Mars is different at night. Open, exposed. You feel the stars more here. The buildings back away, and you can breathe deeper, but not easier. You think of the stories your fellow vigils tell around the brazier, of how sometimes the lamps go out for no reason, or how you hear sandals behind you, but there's no one there, or the one about the man who walked out into the field and never returned, not because something happened, but because nothing did. You reach the outer perimeter and stand still. The wind tugs your cloak. The silence here isn't like Subura's, it's cleaner, but colder. You light your torch again more for the comfort than the visibility, and you walk. Because Rome doesn't stop, because someone always needs watching, and because in the dark corners of the city, the line between watchman and witness blurs. You're not just patrolling a city. You're walking through a story still being written. A low whistle curls through the darkness, almost musical, almost deliberate. You freeze mid-step, not because you're frightened, but because every sound in Rome at night comes with a decision. Investigate, ignore, or remember for later. This one, you choose to investigate, slowly, cautiously. Like a man who knows he might be walking into something inconvenient, or worse, embarrassing. You slip between two buildings, torch raised just enough to outline the shapes around you. There's no whistle now, but there is movement. A cat darts past fat with garbage and secrets. You exhale. Another false alarm, or not. Because just around the corner is a gathering. Quiet, half-lit, but definitely intentional. 5 men, maybe 6, dressed in merchants' cloaks, but standing like soldiers. One of them sees your torchlight and doesn't flinch. The others look at him waiting. You recognize this as what it is, a ball meeting that should not be happening. This is your third job. Disruption without escalation. The fine art of making things inconvenient enough to scatter trouble before it grows teeth. You don't speak. You cough. Loudly. Then you adjust your belt so your gladius clinks against your armor. You don't need to threaten. You just need to exist. It works. They disperse grumbling, melting into alleyways and shadows. One gives you a long look before vanishing. You file his face away for later. Not because you'll report him, but because he'll remember you. And next time, that might be enough. The truth is, Rome's night watch wasn't always about law enforcement. Most times, it was about atmosphere. You weren't the flame, you were the smoke. Your presence meant something was being watched, and people being people acted differently when watched. Historians still argue whether the vigils truly acted as moral police, or if they were just glorified placeholders for a city too vast to truly control. But Rome loved symbols, and a man with a torch and a uniform, that was a symbol. Tonight you carry that torch into a smaller alley where laundry lines sag between upper floors and someone is playing a stringed instrument, badly and loudly. This is your noise checking circuit. Another unofficial duty. During festivals, this street would be packed with music and shouting and drunken declarations of eternal love. But not tonight. Tonight the music is off key, the shouting has stopped, and the silence is too precise. You knock on a door. Just once. A man answers, middle-aged, shirtless, holding a lute like a weapon. "Didn't know it was that loud," he mumbles. You nod. You don't write his name. You don't need to. This isn't about enforcement. It's about acknowledgement, nugger. That's your job sometimes, to be the mirror people don't want to see. You continue on, stepping carefully over broken pottery and past the remnants of a collapsed stool. No blood, just poor craftsmanship. You make a mental note to recommend repairs to the insula owners. You know they won't do it, but you'll have reported it, and that's what matters. You pass a door that's open just enough to hear whispers. It's tempting to pause, to listen, but you know the sound of all ye intimate argument. When you hear it, and you're not paid nearly enough to be a marriage counselor, instead, you head toward Maria Water Point. Rome's public fountains, the beating veins of a city that drinks even in darkness. The one here is older, carved from worn stone, chipped at the corners. But it runs. And right now, someone is filling a jug. A woman wrapped in a cloak too fine for the neighborhood. She sees you and nods. "Thirst doesn't wait for sunrise," she says. You nod back. You don't ask why she's here or where she's going. But you remember the jewelry glinting at her wrists, the scent of something expensive hanging in the air after she leaves. People pass through Rome's layers like ghosts. Rich, playing poor. Poor pretending wealth. Everyone has reasons. Your job isn't to stop them, just to know they were here. You finish your sweep of the district, just as the moon reaches its highest point. That's when you meet your fourth job. Fire patrol. The only one you were technically hired to do. You enter a narrow side street where the smell of burning oil drifts heavy. A torch left too close to a curtain. You knock. No answer. You bang louder. Still nothing. Finally, you shoulder the door open and find the source, a lamp tipped over flame, licking the edge of a wall hanging. You stamp it out with practiced force. No one thanks you because no one is home. Or at least, no one wants to be found. You relight the lamp and leave it upright. Quiet warning. Fire is the enemy. But it's not always accidental. You've seen torches flung in vengeance, hot coals dropped by mistake, smoke used to flush out debtors. There's a reason Rome's fire laws are written like war plans. And while the vigils are technically firefighters, the line between arson and message sending is as thin as a line of smoke on a cold night. You make a note with a bit of charcoal on your hand, just a symbol to remind you later which house needs watching. Then you pause, listening. Somewhere a bell tolls. Not for you. Not for anything official. Just a time marker rung by an old man 2 streets over who likes knowing what hour it is. You trust him more than the sun. You take a breath. You move again. Always forward, because the city never really sleeps. And neither do you, not fully. Not when there are doors open too long, lamps burning too low, secrets whispered too loudly. You are not Rome's hammer. You are its whisper, its pulse. And tonight the city is beating steady so far. The streets are emptier now, not quiet. Rome is never quiet, but softer. Fewer voices, more footsteps. The kind that trail behind you when you know for a fact you're alone. Or should be. You don't turn around. You've been doing this long enough to know that looking too quickly makes things vanish. Instead, you take a slower route. Down past the bakery where the ovens haven't been cleaned in weeks. Past the tavern that swears it's closed, but somehow always smells like warm wine and cheap lies. Past the statue of Mercury with one eye chipped and a pigeon roosting in the other. The footsteps stop eventually. Or maybe they never existed. Doesn't matter. Because at this mountain is the time of night when your strangest job begins. Listening for what doesn't happen. See, most people assume night watchmen were there to stop fires, thieves or drunks. And yes, you've done all 3. But what you're really trained for is absence. The silence where noise should be. The cold bread stall that's usually warm. The beggar who always sleeps under that arch. Suddenly not there. The Romans called it presentia absentia, the presence of an absence. You call it creepier than a ghost, but harder to explain to your boss. And tonight you notice one, a door left ajar at the fishmonger's. Which wouldn't be weird if not for the fact that the fishmonger always triple checks his bolts. He's obsessive, lost a whole catch to stray dogs once, and has never forgiven the species. You push the door with your foot. It swings open. Inside, not much, but not nothing. A lamp is still burning, a cup half full of wine, a fish hook dropped carelessly on the floor, but no fishmonger. You don't draw your weapon. Instead, you whisper his name, just once. Nothing. That's your cue. You step back out, mark the lintel with a scratch 3 diagonal lines, and walk away. Someone else will ask questions in the morning. Your job isn't solving, it's marking the unsolved. You make the future easier to investigate by being the eyes no one remembers using. Historians still argue whether night watchmen were truly organized into intelligence networks or just happened into the role of nighttime informants. But honestly, you don't care. You know who pays attention. You know what gets whispered at dawn. And you know that what you saw tonight will end up in someone's ear by breakfast. You head toward the Subura next, not your district technically, but boundaries blur when someone needs help. And from the sound of things, raised voices clattering pottery, a sudden scream someone does. You break into a run. By the time you reach the alley, a small crowd has gathered. You're already scanning 3 women arguing loudly, one bleeding from the arm, one man cradling a chicken that is somehow part of the story, but refuses to explain itself. You hold up your hands. What happened, you ask? Everyone speaks at once. Of course. You sort the voices like cloth, unraveling the angry from the scared, the embarrassed from the guilty. Eventually, you get the gist: a neighbor dispute over water access turned into an insult, which turned into a thrown pot, which turned into a chicken getting hit mid-flight and causing panic. Honestly, it could happen to anyone. You don't write names. You never write names in these cases. Instead, you give them something better, a promise to report it tomorrow. That usually calms people down. You tend the wound with a cloth from your own belt. You check the chicken, which glares at you like you insulted its lineage. You nod at everyone. And you move on, because now it's time for another job you didn't train for, but learned on the fly. Checking for bodies. No, not those bodies. Not corpses. Those are someone else's problem. You're checking for the sleeping ones. The passed out, the abandoned, the forgotten. Rome has a lot of those. And if you don't check the stairwells and porches, the next fire might do more than burn grain. You find one tonight? A boy, maybe 10, curled up in a nook between 2 shops. His tunic is too thin. His feet are bare. You crouch. Place a hand near his nose. He's breathing. You lift him gently. He stirs, but doesn't wake. You carry him 3 streets over to a bakery with a warm doorstep and a sympathetic owner. You leave the boy wrapped in an old cloak someone hung for exactly this purpose. You knock once, short, sharp, and vanish before the door opens. You've done this 5 times this month, maybe 6. You forget on purpose. Next, the forum. Not for crime, for messages. Because your other job is courier. Sometimes for the Praetorians, sometimes for senators, sometimes for people who'd rather not be seen during the day. Tonight you collect a small wooden token from under the left hoof of a marble horse. That's your signal. You'll deliver it before sunrise to a doorway in Trastevere. No words exchanged, just action. Rome at night is full of silent arrangements. You're part of several. One involves wine. Every 3rd night you pick up a jug from an unmarked door and deliver it to a temple guard who pays in gossip instead of coin. You know things now. About high priests and low habits, about which temples double as gambling dens, and which gods accept bribes. You never tell. Not because you're loyal, but because the stories are worth more when saved for the right time. And the time isn't now. You're nearly done when you spot a shape near the baths. You squint. It's a man, naked, covered in mud, praying loudly to Neptune while holding a broken amphora like a weapon. You sigh. This is your job too, somehow. You lead him back toward his home, wrapped in your extra cloak, muttering something about sacred cleansing rites and the dangers of poor quality wine. He thanks you at least 3 times. Once in Latin, once in Greek, once in what you think was a hymn. You don't laugh? Not until later. Because this is Rome at night. Strange, sad, sacred, and always watching itself. And you're just one more shadow that makes sure the others don't misbehave too loudly. The sky begins to soften. Not with light yet, but with the faintest shift in color. The blackness turning to a deep indigo, like the moment a bruise starts to fade. Dawn isn't here, but it's pacing around the edges. You feel it in your bones, in your boots, in your eyes which ache from squinting too long into shadows. That ache is part of the job. Because night watchmen in ancient Rome weren't just patrolling, they were absorbing, watching the city breathe in its sleep, noticing the little twitches that meant dreams were shifting to nightmares. And tonight, you're headed toward the Aventine, not for crime, not for fires, for something stranger, something harder to name. It starts with a knock very soft, very late from someone who says she heard a sound. And that's it. Just a sound. Not screams, not theft. Just something odd. So you walk with her. A woman in her 40s, sharp eyes, sharper voice. Her sandals slap the paving stones as she talks, fast, nervous, repeating herself. You ask her what kind of sound. She pauses. Like a whistle, she says. But wrong. Like it came from the stones. You want to say stones don't whistle, but you've been doing this long enough to know that in Rome sometimes they do. You reach her home, a modest insula with 3 levels and far too many staircases. She points toward the back courtyard. And sure enough, when you step onto the stone tiles near the rain drain, there's a sound, a faint warbling note, not a song, not a voice, almost a warning. You crouch, place your ear near the grate. Nothing. Then a click, soft, rhythmic. You recognize it. Water wheel, you say aloud, half to her, half to yourself. Someone's rigged a wheel to spin too fast. It's throwing pressure through the pipes. She doesn't understand but nods anyway. You promise to report it to the aqueduct team. But what you don't say is, who's down there rigging wheels in the middle of the night? Because that's someone else's secret job. Maybe even another watchman's. And you've learned not to poke too hard at things that hum quietly in the dark. You move on thinking about water? How many of your jobs involve it? Not just putting out fires. Starting them too. Because yes, night watchmen were sometimes called to light fires. Controlled ones, signal ones, ritual ones. The kind that burn trash. Or herbs. Or old scrolls that someone doesn't want, found by the morning shift. There's a spot in the field of Mars where you've lit 37 such fires in the past year. Always small, always quick, always watched. You don't ask questions. You just burn what you're handed. And sometimes when the wind dies down and the flames settle into that perfect blue center, you see things in the ash that look like words, but you never read them. Not out loud, because another part of your job, keeping stories quiet. You pass by the Temple of Janus. Now its doors closed, which means Rome is technically at peace. But you know better. Peace is a word used by day. At night, the city twitches with secrets like a sleeping dog. You pause beside the steps. There's a cup left on the 3rd stair. You glance around. This is a message. You retrieve the small coin tucked inside, etched with a fish. No explanation, no instruction. But you know where it goes, the baker on Vicus Tuscus. It'll mean he delivers something else tomorrow. Not bread. Sometimes you think everyone in this city has a secret job, including you. But now it's time for your most personal task of the night. You walk slower now to the edge of Reggio VIII, a narrow alley lined with fig trees too stubborn to die. At the end, there's a stone marker. No inscription. Just moss. and a small worn groove from years of rain. This is where your brother died. Not in battle, not in glory, just slipped, coming home from his shift. Another night watchman like you. You come here every week, leave something small. Tonight, it's a broken wax tablet with nothing on it. A reminder of all the words he didn't get to say. You sit for a minute, longer. Let the silence pile up. Then you rise and keep moving. Because the city doesn't pause just because your heart does. You head toward the baths, not to bathe, to listen. Because one of your strangest duties is to gather rumors. And the bathhouses even before dawn are full of them. Men soak in lukewarm water and whisper about senators, about spies, about wives and coins and strange omens seen on rooftops. You drift in, dressed in the neutral tunic of someone too tired to matter, and you blend. Sit on a ledge, close your eyes. You hear. Said she gave birth to a child with goat eyes. Mosaic cracked again. Same place as last month. Cursed, I swear it. Last night I heard a scream from the Capitol. Not human. You remember it all. Not because you're nosy. Because someone has to. You'll write it later. Not with ink, but with chalk on a wall behind the smithy where certain people know to look. Rome has no official rumor office, but it has you. And the wall. And if one of those whispers turns into truth, you'll know where it started. You rinse your hands in the cold pool and step outside, steam clinging to your arms like ghosts. And there it is, the edge of dawn. Rome turning gold around the edges, statues blushing in the new light, vendors stirring, dogs barking, a priest chanting softly to himself as he sprinkles salt in a pattern you've never seen before. Your shift ends with 3 steps. 1, return your lamp to the rack behind the grain office. 2, nod to the man in the yellow sash. He'll record your patrol. 3, whisper the name of one street that felt wrong. Just one. He doesn't write it down, but he nods. And you walk home, not triumphant, not tired, just done. Until tonight. Because Rome never sleeps. It just hands off its dreams to the next shift. And you walk between them. The weight of the city presses on you even when the sun is up. You're meant to be off duty now, wrapped in a blanket, maybe dreaming of olives and quiet. But rest doesn't come easy when your job is built from whispers. So instead, you pace your little room above the tavern 2 floors up from a baker who sings in his sleep, and 1 thin wall away from a retired gladiator who still talks to his old weapons. You have a dent in your ceiling shaped exactly like your forehead. You've stared at it enough times to name it. But today something pulls you out early. A boy knocks. Thin legs, sharp elbows, big eyes. Courier for the vigils. He hands you a wax tablet sealed in red, urgent. You crack it open and read. 1 word. Porticus. That's it. Which is exactly enough, because to you, porticus means only one place, the Porticus Octavia, the long colonnaded complex with its fish market and temple whispers, and the deepest shadows in Regio 9. It's not your beat, but everyone has a stretch they watch anyway. And this one, it watches back. You head there at midday when the sun makes even the marble sweat. It's loud, briny, packed with fish sellers arguing about scales and priests arguing about piety. You thread through the crowd like a shade unnoticed, and then you see it. On the 3rd column from the north, a mark, scratched into the stone, faint but deliberate. A crescent moon with 3 dots underneath. You've seen it before, twice. Once before the riots in the Transtiberum. Once before that grain shipment disappeared on the Tiber. It means someone's planning something. You stand still for a long time, just breathing in fish and dust, and the quiet certainty that you're not alone in this noticing. Because being a night watchman means understanding what doesn't belong, and sometimes what doesn't belong is someone else who's supposed to be like you, but isn't. That brings us to another of your unspoken jobs, watching the watchers. The vigils aren't perfect. Some take bribes. Some play both sides. Some collect secrets like stamps and then use them to fund retirement homes in Gaul. So you've learned to tell when a colleague's uniform is too clean. when his lamp oil smells like perfume, when he lingers too long on corners where political posters have just been torn down. You don't confront them, you record. Mentally, quietly, piece by piece. Historians still argue whether the vigils were more like firefighters, police, or spies. The answer, if you're being honest, is yes. All three, and sometimes none. Sometimes just tired men with calloused hands and too many shadows in their teeth. Back in the porticus, you trail a figure in dark wool. He's not a fish seller, not a priest, not from your district, but he's reading the graffiti like it's scripture. You follow him as he turns down a narrow alley, only to find he's gone. Just gone. Like someone rewound the moment and deleted him. It happens. You chalk it up to exhaustion or something stranger, and you leave. Because the moment you start chasing ghosts in daylight, you lose your edge at night. Instead, you do something almost more dangerous. You go to the archive. Now Rome's archives aren't public buildings with marble steps and quiet clerks. Not for the likes of you. What you use is a back room in a shop that pretends to sell imported spices, but mostly trades in memory. Behind the jars of powdered sumac and dried lemons is a shelf that slides. Behind that is a room with nothing but shelves. And on those shelves, wax tablets, hundreds of them. Some cracked, some blank, some written in 4 different hands. It's where the vigils keep track of what isn't officially happening. You add a tablet, describe the mark, the man in wool, the date and time. Then you add something more dangerous, a question. You write 3 dots, third sighting, why? And you sign it with your mark, not your name, just a slash and a dot. Enough for someone to know who's asking. Then you leave. Because staying too long in the archive means someone might think you're up to something. And you are. You're up to your next job. You head to the Subura. It's not glamorous, but it's real. Narrow, loud, chaotic. If the Forum is Rome's brain and the Palatine its pride, the Subura is its stomach and sometimes its bowels. You're here because the tavern owner, an old woman with 1 eye and 12 opinions, said something in passing last week about a strange smell in the mornings. So you smell, not metaphorically. You get down on your knees in the back courtyard behind her place and inhale. And there it is. Rot. Not food, not sewage. Rot like something once living and once angry. You dig through straw and stone and find it a bag of meat, tied shut, stuffed with bones, charcoal, and a feather. Not trash, not dinner, a curse. These pop up sometimes. Little bundles meant to hex a rival or summon protection or bind a lover's will. Your job. You take it. Quietly. Carry it to the edge of the Aventine where a small shrine to Hecate hides behind a goat pen. You burn the bag. Scatter the bones. Pour a libation of watered wine. Whisper nothing. It's not protocol, but it works. At least that's what you tell yourself, because this part of the job isn't written down. Not in tablets, not in scrolls, not in marble. But you've learned that cities breathe through both law and superstition, that sometimes the only way to stop a curse is to treat it like a real thing, even if you don't believe in it. Especially if you don't believe in it. You walk home slower today. Feel the city hum beneath your feet. Feel how many things are moving that shouldn't be, and how many are watching. And you think maybe that's the real job. Not the patrolling, not the fires, not even the secrets. Maybe it's just this being the person who sees things and doesn't pretend not to. You sleep with a knife under your pillow. Not because you expect to use it. Rome isn't that kind of city most nights, but because you know what it feels like to wake to the sound of footsteps inside your room and not want to waste time wondering if it's just the ceiling settling. The knife's handle is worn smooth from your hand. Its edge not especially sharp anymore, but that's not really the point. It's not for battle. It's for presence. Still, you don't sleep long. By the time the moon has begun its drop toward the western hills, you're up again pulling your tunic over tired limbs, splashing water on your face that smells faintly of copper. You're on night duty again. And tonight, you have a new assignment. The Courier, Rome's great storehouses, gigantic echoing brick buildings near the Tiber. filled with grain oil winecloth, and more grain, always more grain. They're the beating heart of the city's supply lines, which also makes them a magnet for rats, fires, and thieves with more brawn than subtlety. But the real reason you're sent, something strange was heard in the Horea Galbai last night. Not shouting, not thieving. Something stranger. Laughter. Laughter at midnight. Coming from a sealed storeroom that should have been empty. So of course they send you. You arrive just before midnight, slipping through the southern gate lantern low and ears wide. You nod at the guard posted at the entrance, his eyes already glassy with boredom, and step into the long corridor that leads to the oldest vault. The air is thick here, heavy with the scent of old flour and brick dust. You move past stacked amphorae and bound sacks of barley, stepping over sleeping cats and patches of shadow that shift a little too easily for your liking. Then you stop. There it is again. Laughter. High. Unnatural. Like a child or a woman, or someone trying too hard to sound like either. It comes from beyond the second arch behind the old iron gate. No one bothers to oil anymore. You don't go in immediately. That's how you end up in legends, and not the good kind. You crouch beside the wall, press your fingers to the brick, and feel for vibration. There's none. You whisper into the dark. Just a test. Salve. The laughter stops. A long silence, then the sound of feet, soft but deliberate, moving away. When you finally enter, you find nothing. Just the dust and a few oddly shaped footprints in the flower-covered stone. Barefoot. Small. And going nowhere. You report it the next morning, of course. But quietly. Carefully. Because now you suspect it's not just smugglers. Now you suspect it's a test. Another part of the job, one no one trains you for, is learning how to read the city's games. Rome tests people, whispers to them in corners, sees who's paying attention, who's willing to follow a sound down a hallway they may not return from. Sometimes it's a trick, sometimes it's a trap, sometimes it's both. So you take the day to follow up. Visit the augur's apprentice at the Temple of Bologna. She owes you a favor. You ask if anything unusual has been seen in the auguries. She frowns. Says the omens have been murky. Birds flying in the wrong directions. Smoke drifting in spirals. One priest dreamed of being buried in sand. And this part, she adds only after checking over her shoulder. 3 nights ago, I saw a woman weeping in the fire. Her face was yours. You don't flinch. That's also part of the job. You thank her. Give her a coin wrapped in a clean cloth. Not a bribe, just acknowledgement. And then you head to the one place where people talk because they can't help themselves. The public baths. You don't go to relax. You go to listen. The frigidarium is always full of men pretending to be philosophers. The tepidarium is full of men pretending not to gossip. You pass through both slow towel-draped ears, sharp. You catch pieces of conversation. Heard the prefect's daughter walks the forum barefoot now. Swear I saw smoke coming from the Pantheon's roof. Not its fire. Watchmen in the Horea didn't come back. Quite the same. There it is. You sit beside the last speaker. An older man with a cracked voice and too many teeth missing. He says his cousin was one of the guards posted outside the storehouse. Came home trembling. Couldn't speak. Only wrote the word mirror on the wall again and again until his fingers bled. The man doesn't know what it means, but you do. It's a message. Someone's reflecting something. Maybe literally, maybe not. The vigils used to have a trick for sending covert warnings. A polished bronze mirror placed just inside a threshold. If it cracked without reason, or caught a flicker of someone who wasn't there, you knew not to enter. You haven't seen one used in years, but now you'll start looking, because your job tonight isn't to sleep. It's to make sure Rome does. And the city, ancient and alive, doesn't trust just anyone with that task, especially not when something old is stirring again. You pass the Temple of Mercury on your way home. Leave a coin beneath the threshold, just in case. You whisper a prayer, not to the gods, to the city. Let me keep seeing, let me keep hearing, let me keep knowing. Because to do this job well, you must be many things. A wall, a blade, a question. But most of all, a mirror. The city shifts beneath your feet, not in an earthquake way, though those happen too, but in that strange breathing way Rome has when no one's watching. It exhales through the cracks in the forum stones. It pulses along the aqueducts, and it stirs things that probably shouldn't be stirring at 3 a.m. You walk slowly tonight, lantern-tilted low shadows curling at the edges like burnt parchment. The official patrol route says you should check the Subura district next, but a feeling keeps tugging you west, toward the edge of the Aventine, toward the sacred places people pretend to forget. You've learned not to fight the pull. Instinct is part of the uniform now, even if it doesn't show on the bronze badge pinned to your chest. The Aventine Hill at night is too quiet. Even the dogs have the good sense to stay indoors. You pause near a neglected shrine dedicated, you think, to an obscure agricultural deity no one prays to anymore, and light a bit of incense. Not for the god, for the air. Something about the silence makes you want to fill it before something else does. Halfway down the slope, you catch sight of a familiar figure, a fellow vigiles, young, shivering slightly, standing far too still. His name is Gaius, and you know him to be new, a few weeks into his rounds. Still thinks ghosts are for peasants and superstitions are bad plumbing. You approach and he startles visibly. Points, there he whispers. Do you see it? You look, and yes, you see it. A light bobbing gently along a narrow alleyway. It moves like a lantern, but no hand carries it. No footstep accompanies its glide. Just the glow and a faint sound like whispering water. It turns a corner and vanishes. Gaius looks at you, eyes wide. What do we do? You say nothing. You just start walking. You don't run. You don't shout. You follow. Because here's another truth they don't teach during initiation. Some jobs only appear at night. Some assignments can't be written down. And some secrets live in places only the truly exhausted ever stumble into. You turn the corner and find nothing, except the stone wall of a bathhouse, cold, empty, still. But on the wall someone has scratched a symbol, barely visible in the low light. An eye inside a triangle, inside a circle. You recognize it. An old mark, used by early watchmen to signal hidden passageways or concealed dangers. But it hasn't been used officially in over 50 years. You turn to Gaius. Go back. Walk the Subura road. Pretend you never saw anything strange tonight. He nods. Doesn't argue. Runs. Smart boy. You remain. Trace the symbol once with your fingers. Then tap the wall 3 times the way the old instructions specify. A low click. The wall shifts only a hair. Only if you know to look, but you slip inside. The passage smells of mildew, animal fat, and something older. You descend stone steps, your lantern flickering against centuries of soot. You find yourself in a disused corridor of what must have once been part of the Cloaca Maxima, the ancient sewer. Except someone has swept it recently. That's always worse. Unattended ruins don't frighten you, but maintained ones, someone's still using them. You follow the corridor until it opens into a chamber, lit by 4 oil lamps, each carefully placed in a corner, illuminating shelves filled with scrolls. Scrolls marked with the sigils of various Roman departments, temple registries, legal decrees, personal records. And in the middle, a desk, empty, except for a single item, a polished mirror, bronze, slightly tarnished, but undeniably watching you. You move closer and see words scratched into its surface. Not in Latin, in Oscan, one of the old languages, mostly dead now. You squint, translate. We remember what you forget. You don't touch the mirror. You step back. This is above your pay grade, but not your responsibility, because night watchmen, especially the experienced ones, don't just protect Rome from fire and burglars. They keep the old things sealed, the strange things quiet, the forgotten things forgotten. You exit the chamber slowly, backtracking each step. You don't speak. Don't breathe too loud. You mark the location in your mind, not with a street name, but with a sequence of sounds. 4th fountain left, turn hollow wall. When you return to street level, dawn is blushing over the rooftops. Rome is waking up. You hear the clatter of carts, the muttered curses of merchants, the distant barking of a dog who probably has better sense than most senators. But under all that, you feel the city watching you back, because now you know something it didn't mean to share, and Rome doesn't like that. You file no report that morning. You just sit at the barracks table eating cold lentils, letting the heat return to your bones. One of the older watchmen walks past and pauses. He looks at you, looks long. You saw something, he says. You nod. He nods back. Welcome. That's all. Because there's a second oath the senior watchmen take. Not to the emperor, not to the gods, to the city. To guard not just its streets, but its memory. And now you carry that too. You sleep through most of the day. That's the deal you've struck with the city watch. While it sleeps, vanish while it stirs. But when you wake, the light's already fading again, and the shadows have started stretching long fingers across the barracks walls. You rise slowly, body heavy, from the cold stone bench, and gear up without thinking. Tunic, belt, dagger, lantern. Same every night. Except now the weight of the mirror you didn't touch is still sitting somewhere behind your eyes. Out on the street, everything smells faintly of vinegar and bread dough. A good sign. It means the bakers haven't burned anything yet. But it's not the bread you're thinking about tonight. It's what that older watchman said before fading into his own route. Welcome. Welcome to what? So you start asking questions. Not loudly, not directly. You've done this job long enough to know you don't shout into the wind and expect secrets to shout back. You whisper, you watch, and most importantly, you wait. Your first stop is a grain merchant you once saved from a collapsing wall during a tavern fire. She still owes you, and favors in Rome are currency with better interest than gold. Over a drink of watery wine, you mention odd symbols you've seen scratched into alleyways graffiti that doesn't match any gang or trade signs. She frowns, nods slowly, and tells you to visit a mosaic floor in the Baths of Agrippa just before sunrise. Look under the dolphin's eye, she says. You do. It takes a few mornings pretending to be bored scrubbing tiles like a dutiful slave, but eventually you find it. A small opening in the grout, a gap that shouldn't be there. You press it. Another passage, another descent, and this one isn't empty. A man is waiting. He wears the standard tunic, but something's off. His face is covered with a thin linen veil, the kind used for funerals. His hands are ink-stained. He doesn't speak, only gestures to a wooden box, then leaves. Inside the box are scrolls, dozens of them. Some brittle with age, others freshly written. They are lists, inventories, maps, but not of temples or granaries, of people, names you recognize, senators, merchants, priests, and next to many names, strange annotations. Sees too much? Listens near the forum well. Dreams in the old language. You sit there for hours reading. One list is labeled Custodes Umbrarum, Keepers of Shadows. It includes 5 names. One is yours. Historians still argue whether the vigiles nocturni, Rome's night watchmen, were simply an underpaid fire brigade or something more. Officially they were. Bucket-carrying, burglar-chasing, rat-wrangling heroes of the common alley. But as you trace your name down that list, written in a hand eerily familiar, you understand what you've stepped into. There was always a second job, always a second Rome, and you're in it now. When you emerge into daylight again, the crowds feel different. Too bright, too loud. Every shadow seems to squint at you. But back in your usual patrol zone, everything's as it was. A pickpocket here, a sleeping drunk there, the hiss of chamber pots hitting stone. And yet, you start to notice them, other watchmen, lingering longer at corners where statues are missing fingers, leaving chalk marks that disappear by morning, nodding once when they pass you, but only after looking down and making sure the street is clear. One leaves you a note tucked into a drain spout. Tonight, Esquiline, where the air stinks of sulfur. You go. Of course you do. The spot is behind an old tannery. It does stink. But what you find isn't a crime or a ghost. It's a woman in priestess robes, kneeling beside a fountain no one remembers. She's weeping, silently, holding a wax tablet carved with names you recognize from the box. She doesn't speak to you, just sets the tablet afloat in the fountain, watches it spin once, then vanish beneath the water. Then she walks away. You don't follow? Some secrets aren't for chasing, they're for witnessing. That night you walk your route in silence. You pass the bakery, the stables, the litter of broken amphorae outside the wine shop. You pause under a statue of Mercury god, of travelers and thieves. Someone has tied a sprig of yew to the base, a signal maybe. You leave it alone, because that's part of the job now too. You're not just watching for thieves or fire. You're watching for memory, for meaning, for the places Rome hides itself from the world, even from its emperors. And the deeper you go, the more you learn to read the city like a book. Some nights it whispers to you, others it stays silent. But either way you listen, because someone has to. You begin to notice the silences more than the noise. Not just quiet, but patterned silence, like footsteps that stop just before the archway, or voices that drop right before a name is said. Rome is full of noise, but the truth of it hides in the absences. And you, night by night, are learning to hear those. One evening, not long after the fountain and the priestess, you walk past the temple of Saturn. Just as the sky blushes violet, the air smells of ashes and old incense. At the base of one column, there's a mark, a crescent, cut into the stone, small and deliberate. You've seen it before. It means someone has died, and their memory must be protected. You touch it once, then move on. Some things you don't talk about even with the others. By now your route has shifted. Not officially on the surface, you still patrol the same few streets near the Subura, near the bakery, that always forgets your name. But below that, a second route has emerged, one made of glances, glyphs, and invisible threads. You're no longer just a part of a fire brigade or a thief catcher. You're part of something older. A system, maybe a brotherhood, maybe a ghost. There are no names for it, and no one calls it what it is. But every now and then, you catch the eye of another watchman, and that's enough. You both know. You protect not just Rome's bodies, but its bones, its memory, its secrets. Historians still argue whether there ever was an inner circle of vigils, nocturni, an unofficial intelligence network disguised as a public service. No definitive records survive. No orders, just hints in letters, strange omissions in reports and legends told by candlelight, like the one about the fire that never started because someone poured seawater over a scroll instead of oil. You start to feel it in your bones, the weight of this invisible city. The Rome that isn't on maps, that hides behind frescoes and under bathhouse tiles. That breathes in the pause before a senator speaks too carefully, or a merchant pays too little for a tombstone. You witness a magistrate pour wine into the gutter in the shape of a circle, then walk away without speaking. You find a wax figure, stabbed through with a quill nailed to the back of a wooden stair. You hear children whispering names they shouldn't know, and then forget them by morning. Every night is a story. Not all of them end. And you've become one of the keepers. Your boots wear smooth, the same stones night after night. You know which walls lean when the wind changes, which houses leave candles burning until dawn just in case. Sometimes you wonder what would happen if you left. If you walked away from this second Rome, told no one, and moved to the coast to sell fish or mend nets. But then someone tucks a message into your belt without you noticing, and it's written in a cipher only you and two others know. And the dream of escape fades. Because this is your job. You keep people safe, not from monsters, but from memory that burns. One night you're summoned, not with words, but with a pebble placed on your windowsill, a flat black stone with a line of silver through it. You dress quickly, no questions, and head to the top of the Aventine. There's a garden up there, forgotten mostly, dry fig trees, an old altar that used to be something else. You find two others already waiting. Both wear the same tunic as you. One nods. The other lights a lamp and places it under a cracked statue. Nothing is said, but something is buried there. You help dig. What you find is small. A scroll wrapped in silk, tied with a knot that's been soaked in wax. You don't open it. You don't ask. You help rebury it, deeper under rock this time. Then you cover the spot with rosemary and ash. It's not your story, but it's yours to protect. Rome never tells you everything. It shows you piece by piece, like a mosaic that only makes sense when you've stepped far enough back. And even then, some tiles are missing. Some colors don't match. But if you're lucky, if you're quiet and brave, and just a little foolish, you'll see enough to understand what your job really was all along. Not just keeping fires out, but keeping truths in. You head back home just before dawn. Your route takes you past the river. The water glows faintly in the sunrise. There's a boat moving silently along the bank, rowed by someone in shadow. You don't look too closely. Some things aren't meant to be witnessed twice. Back at the barracks, you sit with a bowl of barley soup, lukewarm and lumpy. But it tastes good because you've earned it. Your hands smell like smoke and old leather. Your eyes are sore, but there's something deep in your chest, stillness maybe, or pride, or just the quiet satisfaction of knowing a secret and keeping it. You're no longer just a night watchman. You're part of a tradition older than most temples, stranger than most gods, and quieter than any senator will ever admit. Rome sleeps because people like you do not. The city is safe because someone keeps its shadows in check. And now, as the sky lightens and the torches burn low, you close your eyes. And Rome for one more day will never know what it owes you. Now everything slows. The sky outside your room may be dark or full of morning haze, but here within these stories, you've done enough for tonight. Let your breath settle, long and deep. Feel the weight of the past lift off your shoulders like a cloak being unfastened after a long march through the city's quiet, watchful streets. You've walked alongside Rome's hidden protectors, those who moved silently through the alleyways, listened in shadowed corners, and read a city's true heart in the flicker of a lantern. They were never heroes by name, never marble statues or coins or grand speeches. But their footprints remain etched into stone, into silence, into sagas told when no one official is listening. Let your body relax from the crown of your head down to the soles of your tired feet. Sink a little deeper into your bed, your couch, your corner of the world, wherever you're resting. Outside, there may still be sounds. A creak, a gust, a quiet car passing, but they are just echoes now. No danger. Only the kind of stillness that comes after knowing a city's secrets and carrying them gently into sleep. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. Maybe by now you've already drifted off to sleep, and if so, we hope this story brought you peace of mind and helped you rest a little easier. Deep sleep makes life better, and we're truly happy to be part of that. Until next time, sweet dreams.